Hi, Labor Tech. Thanks for awarding Tech Researchers for Palestine with the Social Justice Award. I'm Gina, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Tech Researchers for Palestine today. Tech Researchers for Palestine is a collective of researchers in computing that are organizing in response to the genocide in Gaza. Despite a recent quote-unquote ceasefire, the people in Gaza are still suffering. Right now, conditions in Gaza are dangerous as people are facing a lack of adequate housing after 90% of homes have been destroyed at the onset of the winter season. On top of this, Israel continues to restrict humanitarian aid and commercial trucks from entering the Gaza Strip, a disturbing continuation of a policy of systemic starvation and denial of medical care to the population in Gaza. Finally, killings by the Israeli occupation are continuing after the ceasefire, with a recent estimate calculating about 8 deaths a day. Our goal is to respond to the Palestinian trade union's calls to divest from the genocide. In their words, as Israel escalates its military campaign, Palestinian trade unions call on our counterparts internationally to end all forms of complicity with Israel's crimes, most urgently halting the arms trade with Israel as well as all funding and military research. The time for action is now. Palestinian lives hang in the balance. As tech researchers, our labor is used or repurposed for death and war. For example, activists researched the endowment of the University of Michigan and found investments into weapons manufacturing companies and other companies that supply weapons and technology to the Israel occupation forces. Researchers in academia may work on projects funded by the military, which benefits weapons and surveillance capabilities. And finally, tech companies who employ or fund researchers may directly assist the Israeli occupation forces by providing technology. For example, Google's Project Nimbus provides cloud computing capabilities to the Israeli military. Researchers are workers, and we should leverage our labor to divest from genocide and disrupt the systems that support it. We're following in the footsteps of other workers that are taking direct action, like researchers at USC who pledged to stop contributing to military research and Italian dock workers who have blocked shipments of arms to Israel. One action you could take right now is to sign our pledge to divest your research from genocide now. This is at bit.ly/techdivestpledge with the first letter in each word capitalized. And finally, a little word about what things we do. As tech researchers for Palestine, we want to focus on supporting workplace organizing by building networks of organizers across campuses and other workplaces so we can strategize together on how to make change collectively. We do this by hosting events in person at conferences like FACT, DIS, or CHI. We also host online workshops focused on research and organizing skills for divestment. So hopefully we'll be seeing everyone at a conference near you. Bye.
I'm Oliver Haimson, and this is Rufus. I invited him to join me for the video today. So talking a little bit about my book, Trans Technologies, and basically it's about technologies that are created to help address some of the needs and challenges that trans communities and people are facing. And so I interviewed over 100 creators of trans technologies, and this book came out in February from MIT Press. And the thing that really inspired me to do this project was I just kept coming across exciting trans technologies. So these were really things that I would have never thought of myself. So I had mostly been thinking about like social media because I'd been researching social media for a number of years, but there were things that people were creating, things like trans game jams and stream teams for mutual aid, where people do live streaming and come up with money to help people who are needing money for gender affirming surgery, things like that. And so my research team and we started doing interviews a couple years ago. And once I started analyzing the data, I just realized there was a lot here, and it was going to be a lot bigger project than I initially had imagined. And one of the things I'm most proud of with this work is really just being able to get this book out here that is highlighting all of the amazing trans technologies that people are creating. So I think that's one thing that the book does, is really document the landscape of technologies that people are creating in this space, which is really unique and really exciting. But also one of the things that I show in the book is how some of the needs and challenges that are actually the biggest issues for the most marginalized members of the trans community are not always the things that are created, that are actually created as technologies. So one example here is safety. And this is obviously a huge need for trans communities that face a lot of violence, and there's not actually a lot of safety technologies. So that kind of goes into my future plans in this area. I would really like to actually build and design and deploy some of these trans technologies. Specifically, I'm thinking in the safety space, and I don't know if I'll be able to actually do this or not, but I would like to create a safety self-defense kit type of technology specifically for the community in Detroit, mostly trans women of color, non-binary people of color, who really face a lot of issues with physical safety. In general, I'm just continuing on in this space, thinking about, what do communities need and how can I think about that both with research and technology design. So that's it for today. Here's Rufus again, so you can say goodbye to him. And yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Christien Tompkins. I'm the author of A Burdensome Experiment, Race, Labor, and Schools in New Orleans After Katrina. I want to thank the Labor Tech Research Network for their recognition as the honorable mention for this year's book award. All my life, people have been telling me how important education is, not only for my individual advancement, but for the broader freedom of my community and equality in this nation. And I took that message very seriously, both in my own schooling and in becoming a teacher at a young age, through the Summer Bridge program in high school, through college, and as a Teach for America Corps member after undergrad. When I interviewed, Teach for America had started placing more and more teachers in charter schools, and the school that I interviewed at told me that working there would be more like working at a high-powered law firm than a traditional public school. And every day I worked there almost, they told me how this is a place where we worked different, we worked better, we worked harder, we didn't have a union contract in between the teachers and the management. I was also deeply affected by the events of Hurricane Katrina, and when I saw how they had transformed New Orleans school system into the first completely charter school model. I knew that's where I had to do my research on the movement and how it was transforming teaching labor. There's a lot of people in this book, young people who earnestly and desperately want to make a change in the world, right, and make a difference. And the kind of technocratic machinery of the charter school movement and its market model is very efficient at directing those energies towards its own ends, right, of setting up schooling as a kind of expert bureaucracy above and away from the communities that they serve. When I present this work, and some of those same kinds of young people come up to me asking, what can they do? Where should they go? How can they still make a difference? I feel proud and inspired that that energy is still there, even if I don't have the direct answers of telling them what to do beyond going to look to and being in community with the people and communities they want to serve. As far as my upcoming research, I'm looking at the democratic socialist movement in New York. One of the things that I've really been paying close attention to is the way that Zohran Hamdani and his allies have been using the language of expertise and merit and choosing the best and the brightest, good government, efficiency, in terms of describing their plans for the city during his mayoralty. These are right terms that you would hear in the kind of technocratic apparatus of the charter school movement too. So how these kind of ideas about expertise get mobilized within a movement that has a truly democratic and emancipatory political horizon is something that I'm very interested in following over the next few years. All right.
Sometimes technology and the hype around technology, you can find in the archive how that hype sometimes is manufactured and how that kind of like success in putting technology as the thing that will fix everything might allow discourses that kind of like tell workers, buckle up, this is the time that you need to buckle up so the economy can kind of like flourish. And finally, I wanted to say that I think this paper also examines kind of like the history of information technology in a place, Mexico, where perhaps we wouldn't think about to look in. I think that the role of IBM in this whole story, which is huge, it's something that is worth kind of like researching a little more. IBM had very specific political goals with coming into Mexico or into Brazil. So I think there's a lot to kind of like unpack it about the political possibilities of computing, which is also something that we talk a lot about. And I wanted to kind of like mention a little bit about the archive that I produced with workers for this paper and for my bigger dissertations, and kind of like finish that, leading a little bit to what will be my book, which is on this topic as well. So this archive is not only kind of like it's not only the day-to-day operations of workers, but a lot of the theory that I try to use, a lot of the arguments come from these workers, are reflections that these workers did together by connecting with scholars in Mexico as well, by educating themselves. So I wanted to bring them as not scholars, but as people who have studied their labor conditions and have their own theory. So I brought some of them. And towards like thinking about what will be my book, CTS, el Centro de Tecnología de Semiconductores, still exists today. And today they continue to kind of like put forward this idea that technology will fix everything. So as I'm thinking about my book, I would like to further connect design to the labor of assembling computers, but eventually also to land and the environmental conditions that the workers' bodies are the first one to kind of like signal, but it also seeps into the environment and land.
So the implications for us to think about AI and future of work from this study is that we often talk about which jobs AI can replace, as if the replaceability is a fixed property of the work itself, right? We talk about the task characteristic, like whether it's a routine, whether it's not routine. But my research really shows that the opposite, right? The replaceability is constructed even before AI is here. And it's created by measurement system and its managerial decisions and the institutional choices about what count as valuable human contribution. And the workers who look replaceable are often the ones whose labor we've chosen not to see and value. And so so it's really the destiny of human workers in the age of AI isn't determined by machines alone. It's not like as long as AI is here, the workers are going to be replaced. It's really showing. My paper is really showing that it's determined by us, right? By the humans who design all this measurement system to choose to what they choose to see and what they choose to value as human contribution. Yeah, I guess that's a kind of implication that I draw from the paper, and I want to really kind of bring attention back to the kind of pre-AI, like even before AI, even before the technology is here, we're already doing all this work to metric, to like rationalize and like routinize and kind of reduce the complexity of our the human contribution that we've doing before that. So there's a foundation we already constructed that paved the way for the AI to replace. So then we should go back to that first stage of, what are we doing that gives rise to this kind of huge wave of AI replacement of creative workers and emotional work. Yeah, I would just stop there, but I welcome any questions and yeah, I look forward to hearing your interest in this. And thank you so much for all the work you put in the reviewing of the papers. And I'm happy to serve as a member in the future to review papers to do the work.